So let's come to the final, important part of pedigree analysis. How are we going to identify? So these are the basic rules that we should be applying when we are solving a pedigree. So these are the 4 types of inheritance: autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, that is present in the body chromosome. Then we have sex-linked, or we call it as what? Exactly, it is X-linked. And sex-linked recessive, otherwise called as X-linked. So it is better we always represent it as X-linked recessive. And these are the 4 types of inheritance that we are going to look into. So look at the first one, autosomal dominant. Here the affected child must have at least one affected parent. That means if I talk about a dominant trait will be appearing in every generation, please note. Point number 2, normal allele is recessive and abnormal allele is dominant. What do you mean by this? Here, the disease causing or the genetic trait that is present in a gene is actually abnormal gene and it is dominant. A recessive gene is actually normal and it is recessive. And it does not skip generation. Every generation, if you are going to find one affected person, that you can definitely close in on dominant. The next part of your solution should be either it is autosomal or it is sex-linked. That is what you should see. And here the next clue that you can use for, or the next rule that you can apply is males and females are equally affected. So for autosomal type of inheritance, males and females are equally affected. A sex, particular type of sex is getting affected, then you can definitely close in on X-linked type of inheritance. Both male and female are equally affected, then close in on autosomal inheritance. Then the defective gene is present in the autosome. So this is how you should be solving for an autosomal dominant type of inheritance, which is supposed to be the most easiest one to find out. Coming to the next one, autosomal recessive. Okay, when I say recessive type of inheritance, it is very, very easy. Why? Because it will skip generation. That is the first thing you should see. Recessive means it skips generation. Next one, very, very important, is that the parents are unaffected, but you see one of the children can be affected. That is your first clue for a recessive trait. Affected child but parents are unaffected, they can be carriers. That is the first clue. Second one, abnormal alleles. Both are recessive. For this particular trait to be present, both the genes must be affected, then only you can say that it is a recessive gene. And then parents are heterozygous for this, and defective gene is in the autosome. So this is how it is very, very easy for you to solve autosomal recessive trait. Coming to the next one, it is X-linked dominant. X-linked dominant trait is kind of rare, where father will be sending this type of inheritance pattern, will be passing on to the daughters, father to daughter. And the most important clue that you should use for sex-linked dominant will be, it will follow this triple D rule. What do you mean by triple D rule? Dominant. Okay, there should be a dominant gene. So that means every other generation they will be showing this type of affected individual. Affected individual is dominant and daughters are mostly affected. So this is what you should look in for as a clue, and then you can start solving it. So generally it is fathers to daughters or mothers to son. When you compare these two, fathers to daughters are more. Affected males will pass the gene to all daughters. Why? Because the father has got only one X gene, and if that X gene is affected, definitely how many number of offsprings they are going to produce who will be females, all will be affected. Daughters give equally to son and their daughters. This I told you already. So a daughter having one affected gene and this is dominant, and if it is present on the X chromosome, she will be giving it to her sons and daughters at this 50% chances. It will not skip generation. Why? Because it is a dominant trait. And more females are affected, or females can be carriers for this type of disease. Inheritance pattern. Fathers can be affected here. Fathers can never be a carrier for this disease. Coming to the last type of inheritance pattern, which is X-linked recessive. Here the mother will be sending it to her son. Why? Because mother is having one affected gene and one is normal. For a recessive gene to get expressed, there should be two recessive alleles coming into, play. For example, for a female to be born like this, then she has to marry an affected male. A carrier female marrying an affected male is a very rare combination. Then only in that combo you will be getting an affected female. So it's always a female who is the carrier in this one. She will be passing it on to her son, and that is also 50% chances where if she is going to give this affected gene to her son, where the other gene is Y. Since it is both these are X-linked dominant and recessive traits, we should be concentrating only on the X chromosome. So sons will definitely be affected and daughters will be carriers. It's as simple as that. So let's see the first point. It's found on X chromosome. More males are affected here because they have only one X gene. There is nothing else to suppress it. Whereas in a female, she has one normal X gene. So the normal X gene will take care of the one X gene that has been affected. And the next one is daughters are carriers and pass it on to sons. So sons are all affected. Male can be affected by a single recessive X-linked allele. I told you the reason just now. So what do you mean by homozygous female? A homozygous female is this condition. For her to get affected, she has to marry an affected male. That is very, very rare. And father is affected. Son is not possible. So what do you mean by this? For example, I mean to say a father is carrying this gene, but he marries a normal female. Okay. Now when there is a cross like this, and suppose they give birth to a boy, definitely the father will be giving only Y gene. The mother will be giving a normal X gene over here. So sons will not be affected at all. So son is not possible.